Hey guys, Krusty, William, good to see you guys. Did you guys have a good weekend so far? Hey William, how you doing? I know you don't have the girls this weekend, so I'm sure it's not a fun weekend. Yeah, we mostly worked. Right now, when you're starting out a YouTube channel, you do a lot of working, but we're getting there. Oh, you did have the girls. Good. I'm glad, darling. I know it means a lot to have your girls with you. Krusty, did you get out for a ride? Oh, this is going to be we're going to have a good one tonight, guys. Well, I guess we'll get started. I, I know Sarah and Matt are supposed to be on their way over, and I'm sure Fowler will get here.
Sure they'll join us when they're ready.
Oh, you got your Milwaukee Harley homecoming? Awesome. You dog sat. That's good. That's always fun.
Wait a minute. What's a Harley homecoming? What happens?
I'll let you explain that to him, Krusty. Moo, stop. Moo, moo. Yeah, Moo, get off of things. Moo. Moo is a naughty cat. She thinks she can walk all over everything. Bad
Are
Moo.
we talking it's like a big Harley rally, bike rally?
Okay, yeah. He does the publicity for motorcycle missions.
Ah, okay.
Is all your publicity and stuff in place? I know you've been working on that hard. Fala's here. We can all calm down now. Thank goodness we have Fala.
We were worried. We're getting really seriously worried.
Yeah, we're about to get rowdy up in here. Krusty's been dog sitting. We've done that. It's a homecoming. Okay. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
You guys are on Facebook, aren't you, Krusty? The motorcycle missions? Because I will look them up. And that'll give Doc more information.
Huh.
Well, let's go ahead and get started.
Right.
The fun group's here. So tonight we're going to talk about that DNA was supposed to end all the lies, and then this happened. It's really kind of interesting because we have these beautiful truth seekers and justice warriors. I'm your storyteller in the wilderness of injustice. My ride or die Doc riding shotgun as we navigate through the darkness where evidence is manipulated and the system protects itself at the expense of the innocent.
And never say die.
Never say die. And we're ready to shine a light on the hidden corruption in our forensic labs where DNA, the gold standard of evidence, has been tainted by greed, shortcuts, and institutional cover-ups, you guys. So buckle up. The path ahead is going to be bumpy as we expose how a single scientist's misconduct shattered the foundation of justice for thousands. And this might shake your faith in the one piece of evidence that we've all been taught to trust unconditionally. People lie, DNA doesn't. But you know, that moment in every trial when the prosecutor drops those three magic letters, DNA. The courtroom goes silent. Everybody kind of leans forward. The jury's paying attention. The defense attorney's face drops because we've all been conditioned to believe that DNA is the ultimate truth teller in a case, right? The smoking gun that never lies. Well, buckle up, because today I'm going to show you how we've transformed DNA into a courtroom deity and what happens when that god turns out to be mortal. And we're going to talk about a catastrophe that happened in Colorado. And Krusty, okay, a lot of events. We'll get on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube, and we're going to everybody look up motorcycle missions so we can see what Krusty and Motorcycle Missions Group is doing, so we can see if there's anything we can help or be part of. Okay, guys? So let's start with the story that this seems fictional, but it's painfully honest. Picture this: on September 2023, a young intern in Colorado's most prestigious crime lab is just conducting a routine research on an old sexual assault case. But she notices something really unusual in the data. A male DNA threshold value is recorded, but no actual qualifications value is given. Now, most people, she's an intern, would overlook this detail. But this intern didn't. She alerts her supervisors. That single observation unraveled the career of Colorado's most celebrated DNA analyst and shook the foundations of forensic science nationwide. Meet Yvonne Missy Woods, a 29-year veteran of the Colorado Bureau of Investigations, who worked from January of 94 to November of 2023. And as you can see in this picture right here, we have two of our favorite DNA people from TV shows, Abby Shudo and Gil Grissom. But that's not how it really is. So we're going to find out. So let's go on and learn more about Missy Woods. Woods wasn't just any analyst, you guys. She was described by her colleagues as a star analyst. Although they also noted she worked too fast and was not the most thorough when it came to her work. But here's the astonishing scope. Woods handled over 10,780 cases during her career, making her Colorado's most prolific DNA analyst. She was entrusted with the state's highest profile cases and was frequently called as an expert witness in murder and sexual assault trials. So someone you could trust. But here's what truly gets my blood boiling. The warning signs were clear for years. In 2014, a coworker raised concern about her testing. 2018, Woods faced accusations of data manipulation. She was temporarily removed from casework, received a mental health counseling, and was then quietly reinstated. The system had multiple chances to detect this misconduct, and they failed it repeatedly. And what Woods did, the technical breakdown made simple. Woods modified and removed qualification values, reran entire batches of DNA multiple times without documentation, and concealed potential contamination. In over 30 sexual assault cases, Woods deleted specific values and submitted reports stating no male DNA found, when small amounts of male DNA were present. So those women didn't get justice. When confronted, Woods allegedly told investigators she made changes to complete cases more quickly and avoid additional work. The human impact, this is where it gets real. 1,003 criminal cases were identified with anomalies in Woods' work, about 1 in 10 of all of her cases. Cases involving murders, sexual assaults, robberies, and other violent offenses. So you have these fraudulent reports were sent to 24 law enforcement agencies throughout Colorado. In January 22nd of 2025, the moment of reckoning, Woods was charged with 102 felony counts, 52 counts of forgery, 48 counts of attempting to influence a public servant, 1 count of perjury, and 1 count of cybercrime. The judge's words should haunt us all. This gets to the heart of whether or not science can be trusted, whether or not law enforcement can be trusted, and quite frankly, whether the judicial system can be trusted. So what's the ripple effect here, guys? Real cases, real consequences. Let me tell you about the real people's lives who were ruined by one person's shortcuts and lies. Michael Clark is serving a life sentence for a 1994 murder in Boulder, Colorado. His conviction was partly based on Woods' DNA testimony. But here's the kicker. Clark's case wasn't even included in the CBI's list of 1,003 anomalies, suggesting this problem is even bigger than they reported. His attorney said he was sitting on proof in 2019 when they reran this DNA that supposedly convicted him, but nobody would listen to him until this was uncovered. So when Bode, B-O-D-E, Technologies did independent retesting in Virginia, they found that while Clark couldn't be excluded from one DNA profile, he was excluded statistically from a new, more advanced autosum profile. The report concluded it was more likely the DNA belonged to 3 unknown individuals than to Clark and 2 others. So April 14th, 2025, Michael Clark was released from prison after serving 12 years for a crime he has maintained he didn't commit for 30 years. He's the first person freed due to this scandal. He's not going to be the last, you guys. And I mean, if you look at that picture, you see him with his little kids. Now he's getting out of jail. He's getting out of jail to teenagers. He's missed a lot. So it's not something you can just say, oh, well, at least he got out. Yeah, this is the person, Michael Clark, who he got freed because of her mistakes. Then we have the Garrett Coughlin triple murder case. Now, initially convicted of killing 3 people in 2017, Conklin received reduced charges because prosecutors were unable to call Woods to testify in a case that primarily depended on circumstantial evidence. Michael Chanel Jefferson was convicted in 2021 for a 1985 home invasion killing based on Woods' DNA evidence. Jefferson received a conspiracy charge instead of a murder charge and could be eligible for release in 8 years. The victim's daughter, Tamara Harney, Dean Harney, said, "It's incredible to me that someone like her could affect so many people in the way that she did." The staggering cost of the betrayal? Well, let's discuss the numbers because this isn't just about justice, you guys. It's about money, resources, and a system in total chaos. So the financial impact here estimated the fiscal cost for Colorado through 2024 is $11,071,486. Colorado has requested $7.5 million from legislatures to retest up to 3,000 DNA samples. But according to recent reports, only $67,687 has been spent, less than 1% of the allocated funds. Okay, then what are they doing? Only 14 retests were requested by district attorneys out of 1,003 cases, or problematic cases, because Michael Clark's wasn't in this one. So that's just 1.3%. Now, the hidden crisis is Colorado's rape kit backlog. Now takes 560 days to process, almost twice as long. So some poor woman goes through the terrible trauma of being raped. I'm supposed to say that. And then she has to go through the trauma of doing a kit. And then it takes 560 days for them to process it. Half of the Colorado Bureau's DNA scientists were diverted to review Woods's past work. So 1,462 rape kits are pending as of February 2027. You know, that considering this while we're grappling with decades of lies from one individual, real sexual assault cases are gathering dust in boxes with victims waiting for justice that may never arrive. And also that means that those criminals are able to continue to harm other women. Yeah, it blows your mind. And one of these days we're going to do a whole thing, because as I was digging into this, I was digging into different things with some of these rape kits from all over the United States, and it's criminal. But when we have weak DNA becomes the evidence, we're going to look into a case where that's what happened. And this is Robert Atrops' case. Now we're going to discuss another aspect of DNA deception and what occurs when the science is dubious, yet the prosecutors present it as if it's the gospel truth. Robert Atrops was convicted of murdering his wife, Deborah, in 1988, but the case went cold for decades. And then in 2022, Washington County received a $500,000 cold case grant and decided to retest evidence using modern DNA analysis. Okay, that makes sense. That sounds good. They found skin cells on Deborah's mud-covered coat that did not rule out Robert as a contributor. Sounds pretty damning. Wrong. Here's what they don't want you to know. The Oregon State Police Crime Lab conducted 3 separate DNA tests. The first 2 tests effectively ruled Robert out as a contributor. Only after adjusting the test parameters did the third attempt did the analysis obtain a result that might include him. So the final test produced a likelihood ratio of 132, indicating that it was 132 times more likely to observe the DNA mixture if Robert were a contributor than if it was a random person. So this is, according to the lab's own internal scale, that the result was among the weakest possible outcomes, barely above inconclusive. But what the DNA analysts testified, they could not determine. When the DNA got on the coat, they were married. How did the DNA get there? Whether it was deposited days, weeks, or months before the murder. But this is where it becomes infuriating, because the prosecutor's spin on it was the lab's analysis stated they couldn't classify the result as a match and highlighted the significant limitations. However, during the closing arguments, the prosecutor, Allison Brown, informed the jurors, "We know that his DNA was found on her neck, on her collar, and we have evidence of having that physical contact with her that is directly connected to her murder." The lab never testified regarding the testing of DNA on Deborah's neck, and the analysis has specifically stated they could not determine when or how it ended up on the coat that she was wearing. So despite those significant limitations and contradictions, the jury did find him guilty after deliberating for only 6 hours. And you know they're going to take that back to court. So, I mean, because that they were implying things that were not true. We're getting there. But now let's look at one of the biggest cases coming up, which is Rex Heuermann and the whole genosequencing, okay? Because he's the Long Island Gilgo serial killer that they suspect, right? And this is going to be a huge case. Well, while Colorado is confronting fraud and other states wrestle with weak evidence, New York is expanding the limits of what DNA science can achieve and what courts will accept. With the Rex Heuermann case shaping up, it's going to be a landmark legal battle, you guys. And this could actually have some nationwide precedent with this case. The prosecutors are utilizing the whole genosequencing, the DNA analysis technique that's never been employed in New York State courts before. This is the advanced method reportedly links Heuermann to 6 of the 7 victims via hair samples found at the crime scenes, potentially making it the most crucial evidence in this case. And the battle lines are clear. The prosecution, they brought in leading DNA scientists, including Dr. Kelly Harris from the University of Washington, who described the method as elegant and powerful. They consider this established and reliable science that has been utilized across various scientific fields for decades. Now, the defense, led by Michael Brown, they are taking the aggressive stance against the science itself. Brown keeps calling it magic, and he compares it to the fictional DNA science in Jurassic Park, arguing that it does not belong in the courtroom. I don't know. Taking a look at Rex there, maybe he is from Jurassic Park. Looks like a monster to me. But Judge Timothy Massey now faces a decision that could influence the entire trajectory of this case and establish the nationwide precedent. They've had extended hearings in March and April that underscore the complexity and the contentious nature of this situation. And it really is, between this advanced forensic science and traditionally illegal standards for the admissibility of evidence, you guys. Because one thing about it is they're saying it goes against the Fourth Amendment, which is that you don't have to worry about giving up your rights. Well, they're saying that just because he's related and they can use that GMO testing and through relatives decide who you're related to and run your DNA, that you didn't give them permission. So that's going to be a big, huge thing. And we're going to see more about that. And then we have Bryan Kohberger, and that's their strategy. That whole case is a mess. I'm sorry. His attorney, she's a piece of work. That Ann Taylor. There's something just wrong about that whole case. And the thing about them coming out and saying that someone was leaking information, personally, I wouldn't doubt if it wasn't the defense. I don't know that it was. This is just me saying allegedly. Because they've tried every other thing to throw at the wall to see if it sticks. Now, they're trying to say that even though DNA evidence is solid, the explanation for how it arrived isn't. So they're trying to say that the DNA evidence with Kohberger's case was found on that knife sheath that was located next to one of the victims. But the defense is saying that his DNA match, it is accurate, but the experts assert that it's Kohberger's DNA instead of challenging the science. Here's the twist they're going to put on it. They're disputing the DNA match. The defense plans to argue that the evidence was planted. They will assert that the presence of the DNA does not prove Kohberger was ever at the crime scene, and proposes that the real perpetrator could have planted the knife sheath itself. I mean, I'm just trying to figure. So Bryan hung out with murderers? Is that what they're trying to say? I don't know where they're going with this, because it couldn't have been any of the, crime scene people. They didn't know about Bryan Kohberger at the time they were doing this testing. They had no clue. So there were 2 additional sources of unidentified male DNA found at the scene. These samples were not processed using CODIS because they did not meet the FBI's eligibility criteria. Now, one thing that has been pointed out, this was a party house, so people were coming and going all the time. We don't know. But Oni Kohberger's DNA was found on a knife sheath that he ordered one. They have the records from Amazon. He ordered one, just like it, next to one of the bodies. So there's that. But the police initially identified Kohberger through investigative genetic genealogy rather than through direct database matches. So the question becomes, as Kohberger's attorney put it, what does a knife sheath at a scene mean, essentially? Whether the presence of DNA alone proves guilt or indicates his physical presence at the crime scene. I'm just like, in one side of their mouth, they're saying, well, who's to say he ordered the knife? His family had access to his Amazon account. Now they're saying, oh, he has the knife, but somebody took it and planted his DNA and then went and murdered someone that he was driving around their house in his car. Okay, sounds good.
It's all a trap.
Poor Bryan.
Yeah.
Wah. Not crying for you, Bryan. Sorry, I think the dude's guilty. But what about the constitutional class about genetic genealogy and rights? We'll go into that a little bit more. So here's the uncomfortable truth that nobody wants to discuss. While we're debating the suspect's Fourth Amendment rights in genetic genealogy cases, what about the victims? The victims' rights side. Victims and their families have waited decades for answers in unsolved cases. Let's take the victims of the Golden State Killer. Finally found closure after 40 years due to genetic genealogy. These databases have resolved over 39 cold cases and identified more than 12 unidentified remains from 2018. So the constitutional tension, victim rights aren't explicitly stated in the Constitution. Unlike the Fourth Amendment, most victims' rights stem from state laws, which are often weaker than constitutional protections. So we're asking, should the privacy rights of an individual who uploaded DNA to trace their ancestry take precedence over the right of a murderer victim to have their case resolved? So that's something to think about. I know a lot of these sites now, you actually have to say if you will allow them to use your DNA to test for crimes. So there is that option. But what lessons from Massachusetts happened when their system collapsed? Because Colorado is not the first state to encounter this kind of forensic scandal. Massachusetts provides a roadmap of what a complete system failure looks like. This is a picture of Annie Dookhan scandal from 2012 to 2017. There were 24,000 drug cases affected, you guys. Approximately 20,000 have been dismissed. She falsified thousands of drug tests for over nearly a decade. She's served only 3 years in prison for what she did. That's sad. The next one we have would be Sharon Farak scandal, and that was in Massachusetts from 2005 to 2017. She had 16,000 cases dismissed across multiple counties. Yeah, she only got 3 years. Doesn't sit well with me either, Kirsty. And this chick, Sonja, even used drugs while testing evidence for 8 years. They said she was as high as a kite as she was doing the tests. So Massachusetts' resolution was to dismiss over 37,000 drug convictions across both scandals. The total cost, over $44 million it cost them. Full resolution took over 5 years. And the kicker, in 2022, a Massachusetts judge revealed that the scope might even be larger, State estimates suggest that 250,000 convictions may have resulted from problematic lab work. 250,000. But how many of these inmates have not heard of these cases? They could still be sitting in there and not have a clue that they have a shot at getting out because of these people and their misconduct. But then we got the flip side, when DNA can work miracles. Now, before we become too cynical about the DNA evidence, let me share the other side of the coin here, guys. The cases where the technology has provided justice in ways that seem almost miraculous. The Golden State Killer, the case that changed everything. Joseph James DeAngelo was arrested in 2018 and charged with 13 counts of murder linked to cases dating back to 1974. Investigators utilized public genealogy databases working backward from the victim's relatives until they identified DeAngelo himself through his discarded razors and napkins. The DNA linked him to 13 murders, 51 sexual assaults, and 102 burglaries over a decade. This case signaled the start of the modern era of our genetic genealogy and criminal investigation. What's remarkable is the HBO series I'll Be Gone in the Dark is based on Michelle McNamara's book that was released after her death, 2 months before DeAngelo's arrest. She had been working on this case. She was married to the actor Patton Oswalt, and they went ahead. He went ahead and helped get her book finished. But the true crime media didn't merely entertain; it kept those cases alive in the public conscious, because that's what Michelle McNamara did. She wrote about these true crimes. Now we have the 43-year-old mystery of Vivian Moss. Picture this. Oh, there are a lot of people that do want to know where they come from. Krusty Fowl is right about that. You know, and then there's those of us that figure we'd probably find out we're related to really creepy people and we don't want to know. So it's two sides of the coin there. You have to decide which one you want to flip it on. I just recently had a gentleman that told us that his wife took a DNA test and found out she was 50% Native American. So that was cool. She never knew. So there are cool things that come out of doing your DNA testing. And also there's those people that get the knock on the door saying, can we talk to you about your relatives? That could be interesting too, if you ask me. Now, don't you think so, Doc? Come on.
Well, you're always accusing me of being raised by wolves. So, I mean, who knows?
No, that's what I worry about, Doc. They
Well,
might be visiting you sooner than they would me.
I could have some canine DNA in me. I don't know.
Hey, Matt, so glad you joined us. Yes, he was raised by wolves. My opinion, allegedly. But we have the 43-year-old mystery of Vivian Moss, okay? And picture this. July 11th, 1981, Santa Clara County, California. The police find the dismembered torso of a woman in an empty field where a BART station parking structure now stands, you guys. She'd been stabbed multiple times and had no identification. She just had those two religious medallions. One was the St. Christopher, protect us, and the other showed the Virgin Mary. It's okay, Krusty, I understand. It just bugs you. For 43 years, she was a Jane Doe. And then in 2023, the Santa Clara County DA's office worked with forensic genealogists at Parabon Nanolabs, and they extracted DNA from her remains and created a detailed genetic profile and compared it to genealogy databases. And here's the amazing thing. They identified her as Vivian Moss, a 54-year-old woman who is an active member of her Mount Zion Spiritual Church in Oakland, California. And the breakthrough came when they found her granddaughter, who told investigators Yeah, in 1981, I was supposed to spend the night at my grandma's house. She never showed up to pick me up, and I never saw her again. Can you imagine how that little girl grew up not knowing what happened to her mother or her grandmother? And now she at least knows and, can have some peace of mind that her grandmother didn't run away. So the challenge, C.C. Moore, is the chief genetic genealogist at Parabon, very famous woman now, explained that this case was complicated because African American representation in public genealogy databases is limited, just like Native American. Um, they said, I think the Mexican genealogy is also limited. So there are different groups that have not really, done the genealogy. So they don't have a lot to match it with. So it can be very limiting for them to find somebody and who they are. But they got lucky with the quality matches that enabled them to build the family tree and identify connections. And that's what they do is they build the family tree, and sometimes they find relatives. It could be back in, 1800s, and they slowly bring it forward until they come up with the people that they suspect or that are missing, and they start asking questions. It takes time, but like this, her granddaughter got answers. Okay, Falla, that's good. I like that. And now we're going to talk about the 1970s, the East Bay Killer. February 8th, 2024, you guys. Authorities identified a suspect in two brutal murders from the 1970s. Nellie Hicks, 60, was killed in Newark in 1972, and Teresa Pica, 48, was killed in Hayward in 1979. Both of these women were attacked in their homes and died from blunt force trauma and were SA'd. Through DNA evidence, they identified the killer as Fred Farnhum, a convicted rapist who passed away in 2007 at the age of 73. David Hicks, Nellie's son, said, "I cannot express my gratitude enough for the police department and their dedication. All of them worked extremely hard to bring closure to our family." So he was thrilled that at least he got an answer. And he knows this guy's not out there doing it anymore. And then one of the first people that we had used as a missing person on our podcast here was Michelle Elbow-Shield. And her story was in September 2023. She was in Pine. She was found because back myself up here. She's a Sioux woman from the Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota, and she went missing. But she was last seen in Rapid City, which is 100 miles from the reservation. The investigators found remains in January 2024, and they weren't able to identify her right away. And that's where the DNA technology came in. And they have stepped into the community for the Native Americans. The Bureau of Indian Affairs, Missing and Murdered Unit, and Forensic Lab Othram have started what they call, I think it's called the Spirit. I can't remember. Operation Spirit Return. And this is where they're using the lab, that forensic grade genome sequencing, to identify potential relatives of Michelle's, and they were able to confirm her DNA. So they started in February of 2025 with this groundbreaking initiative for missing and identified persons involving American Indians and Alaskan Natives. So the operation collaborates with NamUs, the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System, and Othram, utilizing advanced forensic genealogy to identify human remains. And this is huge for the Native and Indigenous community because they have, in fact, I just had a conversation a few weeks ago with a woman on Instagram because she was talking about some remains that she had found. And I guess she was part of a team that had located them. And she was wondering if they were ever going to find out, who these people were. And so I gave her the number that I had found for this group, with the BAU so that she could get a hold of them and see if they were taking those cases on. So the unit, they are currently working on 15 unidentified persons across Indian country, including Alaska. And Michelle's case really illustrates the potential of modern forensic technology and the pressing need for ongoing efforts to address thousands of unsolved cases. So we have countless families like Michelle's, because I remember her grandma was on TV when she went missing, that justice has been delayed for far too long. So this crisis is hidden in plain sight, demands our attention, resources, and commitment to achieving justice for the Indigenous community also, because they've been overlooked for generations. But what have we learned today, Trial Junkies? Well, we've seen DNA evidence at its worst. Missy Woods fabricating results for nearly 3 decades, affecting over 1,000 cases. We've witnessed it at its weakest in the Robert Atrops case, where 3 tests were required to achieve a barely conclusive result. And he's gone to prison over it. We've observed it pushing legal boundaries in the Rex Heuermann's case with the whole genome sequencing trial. We've seen it as a scapegoat for Bryan Kohberger's planting defense. I love that. We've also witnessed DNA at its most miraculous, restoring Vivian Moss's name after 43 years, the Golden State Killer case. He terrorized California for decades. And that provided closure to families who have waited nearly 50 years for answers about their loved ones. And the paradox is this: the same technology that can identify a killer from a decades-old crime scene can be manipulated by a single corrupt analyst to destroy hundreds of lives. So the exact science that can solve a 60-year-old double murder can be so weak that it barely rises above inconclusive. The same evidence that can free the innocent can be planted to frame them. Here's what we need to understand. First, DNA evidence isn't automatically reliable. It's only as good as the scientists handling it. And now we can see on trials, when we see these people and their question about their background and their schooling, we can see why. Missy Woods, she demonstrated that one individual can undermine over 1,000 cases spanning nearly 3 decades. Second, even when presented accurately, weak statistical evidence can be depicted as conclusive proof. The Robert Atrops case illustrates how prosecutors can imply certainty when it's absent. They were talking about DNA on her neck. Nothing was said about DNA on her neck. And third, new technology introduces new possibilities, but it can present the challenges for courts. Rex Heuermann's case illustrates that courts are still determining which cutting-edge scientific evidence is admissible. And it can be admissible in one state and not in another. That's another thing to think about. Fourth, sometimes the question isn't whether the DNA is present, but how it got there, because we know Brian's going to try and say somebody else put it there. Fifth, the system's response to misconduct is frequently inadequate and sluggish. Like we said, that one chick got 3 years for messing over 20,000 cases. Colorado has utilized less than 1% of the allocated funds to address over 1,000 compromised cases. And Michael Clark, who got out on a murder charge, he wasn't even one of those cases. So how many more are there, like the judge said? So the research numbers tell us the story that the Innocent Project has recorded 375 DNA exonerations nationwide, including 21 individuals who served on death row. Unvalidated or improper forensic science contributed to around 50% of all DNA exonerations nationwide. The Clara County DA's cold case unit has solved 30 murders since 2011, with over half resolved in the last 5 years. So here's the uncomfortable truth we got to think about, you guys. We've been conditioned to believe that DNA evidence equals case closed. They got him. However, as we've seen today going through this, that's not always the case. DNA can be fabricated, contaminated, or misinterpreted. The reliability of science depends on the scientists behind it. But here's what gives me hope. True crime media we're not just entertainment. Michelle McNamara's work on the Golden State Killer, along with the HBO series I'll Be Gone in the Dark and numerous podcasts and documentaries, keeps these cases alive. We keep talking about these victims. They pressure law enforcement to maintain their efforts. We call them out. I have no problem calling some of these authorities out. Just like I'll call out Dallas and Fort Worth for not taking those missing girls seriously. They've amplified the voices of victims' families. And here's questions, though, that might keep us up at night. How many other Missy Woods are out there in crime labs across the country? How many innocent people are sitting in prison because we trusted a flawed science? How many real perpetrators are walking free because the wrong person was convicted or they haven't done the rape kits? How many families are still waiting for answers that DNA could provide? So, the bottom line, DNA isn't a god, it's a tool. It's a powerful tool that can deliver justice or it can undermine it, depending on who wields it and how it's applied. When we treat it as infallible, we don't strengthen justice. We make it vulnerable to the very human flaws we're trying to eliminate. Science can be deceptive, but it can also uncover the most profound truths. The key is in recognizing the difference. So let's look at we have a couple of missing people tonight. I had some others, but they got located. So that's great news. Love when that happens. One of the young men that we had listed a couple of weeks ago was found deceased. So that was sad. But we have a couple of girls here. We need to find out where they are. We have a missing report alert for Anessa Menzies, the Gila River. Man, by the end of the show, my tongue doesn't want to talk no more. The Gila River Police Department is working with the Salt River Police Department to locate 15-year-old Anessa Menzies, a member of the Salt River Prima Marsacopa Indian community. Anessa, who is extended family in the Gila River area, was last seen on May 17th, 2025 at approximately 9 p.m. in the vicinity of Center Street and Indian School Road in the Salt River area. She was wearing a red shirt, pajama pants. She's 15, 5'5", 150 pounds, black hair, and dark brown eyes. If you have any information about her whereabouts, please don't hesitate to contact the Gila River Police Department at 520-562-4111 or call 911. Ahlaqui Blandman has been missing since May 3rd, 2025. She's currently 31. The Aberdeen Police Department at 605-626-7000. She's female, brown eyes, black hair. She's 5'7" and weighs 150 pounds. Ahlaqui was last seen wearing a gray hoodie, blue jeans, white Air Force One shoes, and was last seen on May 3rd in Aberdeen, South Dakota. She was wearing a gray hoodie and, those shoes, Air Force Ones, I've never heard of them. But if you have any, information, contact the Aberdeen Police Department, 605-626-7000. So what's everybody's thoughts on DNA? What do y'all think about it? Because I know I was watching a trial this week with one of my friends, and she kept saying, "Where's the evidence? She kept waiting for the DNA. It takes more than DNA to make a case, and maybe we've relied too much on the DNA."
Well, I think you made the story made a very valid point, is that DNA as a tool, like any other tools that are used in crime solving, and it can be it can be used by bad people to do bad things, as just as well as to do good things. So, um, yeah, it's not the end all be all.
Yeah, I think that's what we did find out. And that's why these labs are supposed to be accredited. They're supposed to go through a rigorous check to make sure they're doing things properly. And there are small labs out there that are being used that are not accredited. That shouldn't even be an option. They should all have to be accredited. There needs to be oversight. Here's things the human trafficking that goes on during Sturgis rally. Yeah. Yeah, that is a big thing that we're concerned about. What are your thoughts on that, Krusty? I'm hoping there's some motorcycle clubs that will keep an eye out on these things.
Well, it's a good thing that you're going to keep an eye out, because it happens. There's no question of whether it happens. It does.
Yeah.
And people aren't paying attention enough to stop it before someone goes missing.
And that's the sad thing with the trafficking cases. They will literally tell you that there is not any sporting event like the girl that was taken from Dallas from that basketball game. All of these events, they're either taking, with coercion, or there are people there being used in the trafficking industry. So it's something to really think about. And
Agreed, Matt. It's only as good as the person that is doing the DNA testing.
Yeah. And chain of custody of your evidence. Yep. It's so important. Unfortunately, not every lab has an Abby Shudo from, NCIS, or Gil Grissom for CIS, But of course they did all their testing in an hour, which we know doesn't happen. But they make it look good. And that's what we wish could happen, but it doesn't. And so that's why accreditation and having people have oversight, so that these kind of people aren't getting away. She did this 30 years. She was, a DNA analyst.
Real problem is there's nobody. The watchdog is not in charge of what's going on. It's, a lot of times there is no watchdog. So they get whoever is doing the testing gets away with whatever they say, and it's gold to a lot of people.
Sarah, I think you're right too. I mean, there are good motorcycle clubs, and there are some that aren't so hot. Just like there are good people, and there are some people that aren't so hot.
Yep.
So there's good and bad in everything. And all we can count on is that at some of these rallies that we get the good ones like Krusty and some of his friends that will keep their eyes out for things. We don't want you guys putting yourselves in danger. Contact the authorities. I would never encourage someone to, get themselves harmed. And, be prepared. These poor people, because it's boys and young men and children. They might not likely be ready to just go off with someone to be saved, because they've been brainwashed, they've been abused, they've been threatened, so there's a lot involved, but keeping an eye, that's why I always tell everyone, don't always pay attention to that cell phone when you're out and about. Keep your eyes open, see what's going on around you. Well, that's a wrap for today's episode, you guys. You guys are awesome. We have the best community. We're starting. We may be small, but we're getting there. I have a new person that has, I don't know if she was able to join us tonight, but Izzy is going to start helping me with some research, and she's super cool. So I'm excited about that. She's joining our team so that we can see what we can do. If anybody knows anyone that does some self-defense classes, I would love to interview and talk to them, because I think that's something, especially on some of maybe these reservations, maybe they need to start doing some self-defense classes for the young people. We are mighty, and it's not the size of the community, but how you use it. Oh, William, I love it. We are the best. So remember, you guys, question everything. Trust, but verify. Never let anyone tell you that science can't be trusted, because we've seen some great cases where it was used. Fight over protecting. Well, just self-defense for these people that are being trafficked. I want to see what we can do to help these young men, young boys and girls that are being picked up in trafficking. Maybe just some good old I'll share something with you guys. When we lived up in Nebraska, I went and took some classes at the local community college. And one of them was for a PI class, because I've always been inquisitive. I've always wanted to be involved in crime. Not doing it, I promise you that. But in helping.
I'm glad you clarified that.
Of course I'd clarify that. Doc, come on. But so I took this course, and the person that taught it was super cool. She was a private investigator. She was also a hairdresser, but she was super cool. This tiny little girl. Well, she was a mature woman. And one of the guys we took the class with was ex-military. And so one night she had him come in and show us some self-defense moves. And I still remember a couple. I remember my husband's friend, one of Doc's friends, his little brother, got mouthy one night with me. And so I used one of them and kind of put him on the ground and kept choking. Wasn't my fault. I just wanted to see if it worked. Don't be noticing no pauses, fella. But yeah, I just, we need to come up with something, because I would like to talk with Lissa Yellowbird Chase. And I know she said there had been before up on the reservation she was near, where they were doing some, self-defense. But maybe we need to do something with some kind of a program for the Indian country to help these people, these young people, that they have to come to the realization that, sadly, being on the reservation, which they consider their home, which it is, it's not always a safe place, because you can be trafficked from strangers coming into your community. You can be trafficked by someone that that might have an addiction problem, and, sadly let you go so that they can get more drugs. So there's so many different things that can happen. And I'm just trying to think of some things that we can do to help be proactive.
And it's not just self-defense either. It's a teaching, people, you want to be trusting of people, but you have to be cautious too. I mean,
Yeah.
you can't put yourself in harm's way just because you want to be nice. You got to be what do they call that? You have to have a little bit of street smarts,
Yes.
and there's so few people in general that are growing up that don't get taught that. It's regardless of what race they're from. They don't get taught that. But they're obviously there are certain groups that are are kind of taking the brunt of that of the bad actions of people, and if they had some kind of um, program where they would be taught these things, what to be look out for, and when to look out for it, and not always trusting everybody because they said, "Oh, I know your mom."
Yeah.
Uh, if,
Well, even Melissa pointed out when we had our conversation, which hopefully I need to talk to her and see when she wants to come on the show. She talked about the situation of that sadly there is a lot of crime in Indian country that they commit on each other. So it doesn't always come from the outside, and the children need to be the younger people need to be aware of that. Mostly as adults, we're taught by our parents to, you know, be respectful of adults. Hey, Trial TV, glad you're here, darling. We're told, say yes, ma'am, no, sir, and all those things, be respectful. There's a time when not to be respectful. No adult should ask a young person, can you come help me? If you're an adult, you can help yourself. No child should ever think this adult needs my help. No, they don't need your help. So, those are things that, we need to put together and see how we can be proactive to help. Because that's what I want to do with this community. I want to get more of us that are interested in helping people and seeing what we can do, what we can put together. Because I think there are a lot of smart people here. And I think that we can be an asset. And that's why we're going to work towards that. And I love each and every one of you. Hey, the Squeege of Justice is here. The Moo's in the bed. She's over there sleeping. She's such a silly girl.
She heard her name and her head popped up.
Now she's watching us. Gotta watch out. Earlier, she walked over one of the computers. She likes to do that. Make me work and panic. But so let's think about that. So if anyone does know anyone that's done some self-defense classes that, maybe we get some tips from, put some things together, I would love that. Let's see, start my kids when I was a kid. Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, code word. And that is important. Yeah, the family needs code words. And it's sad that we have to think that way, but we do. We have to think that way. Okay. I think I'll try and get a hold of the Red Drum MC group too. I know on Instagram I chat with one of them once in a while, so I'll reach out to him too and see, because something needs to be done, And I mean, like I said, we're an awesome group, and I think we can do something. And I mean, Krusty, you're saying that you're going to keep your eye out. You go to your rally anytime, any rally, keep your eye out, see what you see. We're going to protect people the best that we can. But like I said, we will contact the authorities. I don't want anyone putting themselves in danger. The Handmaiden Tale. So, as we've seen tonight, you guys, sometimes the most significant lies come wrapped in the most convincing scientific packaging. Every wrongful conviction depends on our silence. Every tainted DNA sample hinges on our indifference. Don't let innocent people stay behind bars while the guilty go free. If you have information about forensic misconduct, corruption in the judicial system, or cases that need closer examinations, speak up. Because those weren't just the lab samples being manipulated. Those are real lives, real families, real futures at stake. Until next time, we're going to stay informed and compassionate and demand transparency from The forensic labs never stop seeking justice for those who were failed by the very system meant to protect them. So we love you all, and you all know how to reach me. My email, guess what? It's trialjunkiesunited@gmail.com. I made it difficult for y'all. But I'm Z here with Doc, and we're going to catch you next time. If there's a case you want us to look at, hey, bring it. We'd love that. But let's keep fighting for justice. To all the truth seekers and the justice warriors and trial junkies, I love y'all, and thank you for sharing part of your night with us. We appreciate it, and we love you. Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Move, say good night. She went back to sleep.